Hi, Gerrard here from Purpose Ventures. I've been asked to share with you for a few minutes just some thoughts that I have on how we might deal with a crisis, and hopefully it gives you some good practical takeaways that you can use with what we're all experiencing right now around the world. Just to help with that, I guess it's probably useful to hear a bit of my background and where this experience is coming from. I've been in the technology industry for over 20 years, and that was here in Australia, but also in the US and the UK, working with companies like PwC and Barclays Bank. So my career actually started just around about when the Y2K issue was happening, and obviously that didn't really eventuate to be anything, but obviously there was lots of crisis planning going on then. And then I found myself working with a dot-com company, and as they were getting going, there was the dot-com crash, so having to deal with that crisis. And then fast forward to when I founded my own software company, or co-founded I should say, GreenSense. That was literally in 2007, 2008, so we were dealing with the GFC right up front and having to navigate through that. What's happened since then is that company was acquired by electricity retailer Power, and that's really afforded me the chance to take on some different roles. And there's kind of two parts to that these days. The first is from an investor point of view. So I have co-founded a private equity group called Go Capital, and we've invested in companies like Health Engine or another one, Isotana, which is actually a Curtin University originated company. I also have my own angel investment group which focuses on social impact investing, and that's called Purpose Ventures. And I also then help the RAC who have backed their own corporate venture fund called Better Labs, and so I run that fund on their behalf. So there's this investment piece, and the other side then really is helping and advising companies. So I chair a number of companies. I'm actually on 7 boards in all sorts of industries. And I work then as the entrepreneur in residence for Space Cubed in their +8 program, as well as, again, the entrepreneur in residence at the RAC for their strategic innovation function. And so probably through those roles since I exited my company as well, I've had the opportunity to literally deal with thousands of companies. And so it's been interesting at this time understanding who's doing what and how they're responding. So let me give you what I think are, for me, my top 3 things to think about when it comes to planning and dealing with the crisis. Now, the first one is probably obvious, but to me it's the elephant in the room, and it relates to cash. And if there's one thing I can say when it comes to cash is you need to make sure that you build yourself enough cash runway to make sure you get on the other side of this crisis. Now, as I'm recording this, we don't know where we are in that. We don't know whether we've got a few weeks left or a whole year left or what that's going to look like. And so you need to be thinking about that on an ongoing basis. And a couple of ways to kind of consider that is really encourage you to do some scenario planning. What does it look like if you were to lose 20%, 30%, 50%, maybe even more of your revenue? And I've got clients I work with that are in that situation. And make sure you've got a really, really clear picture of what your forward cash runway looks like. Now, a lot of people don't realise that if you just consider the concept of cash buffer, which is if we got no more money in, how long have we got left? The average for small business is actually about 27 days. Now that probably depends on your company and the size and things like that, but that's not long to make the right decisions. And see, the thing is, as entrepreneurs and business leaders, we tend to be kind of optimistic people in that our whole role is about solving problems. And it's pretty easy to look at what's happening now and go, well, that's just a problem I've got to figure out and get through. And that is true, but sometimes that can mean we don't make the harder decisions soon enough. And in this situation, I don't think you can wait too long to see if the data is going to show up, because by then it might be too late and you've actually got to make drastic changes. So I just encourage you to take a really close look and make sure that you're making the hard decisions now. Now, as part of that, that kind of leads on to my second tip, I suppose, and that's people. The way I look at business, no matter what product or service you're selling, whether you think you're in a B2C or a B2B market or whatever that looks like, all business is what I would say is people to people. And right now, more than anything, we need to be making sure that we care for people. And so that's in terms of your customers who might not be able to buy from you, it's your employees, it's your investors, your shareholders. What does it actually look like to genuinely care for people at this time? And I think we need to make sure we elevate that as a priority above some of the real drastic business things that we might need to be deciding, because there's kind of pretty important things in life. People's lives are literally at stake. And so what I want to say about that is, as a business, we can be people who are compassionate, who are caring, that kind of speaks to who you are as a person. But the other side I would say is that as a leader in your organisation, that doesn't mean that you can't make and don't need to make hard decisions. And so I would also encourage you when it comes to people to be decisive and to get on the front foot with your communication. Most people are wondering what decisions you're going to make. They're wondering whether their job is secure and things like this. And I think you're far better getting on the front foot with that. And even if, we're living in a pretty fast changing environment at the moment. So you might say one thing one week and that has to change the next week. But I think to respect people, it's about being decisive and upfront on your communication. There's a saying I love, which is people are down on what they're not up on. In other words, if you don't bring them up to speed on what's going to be happening right now, they're probably thinking worst case scenario. And so I think it's in your interest to be upfront with your communication. The final thing then I'd get you to think about in terms of this crisis is the concept of your values. Now, values are interesting because a lot of organisations have them, and they often can just be words on a page. And it's actually times like this when you get to actually really understand yourself whether these values are true, because it's in the challenges that you ultimately see whether you're going to live out your values. And I think some of the things that we've just talked about become representative of your values. And we need to be really careful that we don't just dive into the short-term solution and do that at the cost of the long-term aspect of your brand. And if you have values that mean you treat people a certain way, or you show grace on money that's coming in, or things like this, what you're actually doing is improving your brand, you're building your reputation, and you're building loyalty over the long term. And so think about the values that you have of an organisation. If you don't have them, now's a great time to set them. And then as you start acting on your response to the crisis, make sure you look through that lens. How do our values determine the decision that we should make at this point in time? So that's my 3 tips, all about people, cash and values. I hope they help you, and just trust that you're safe at this time, and that your business finds a way to get through and continues to grow and accelerate on the other side.